I'm Nisha Pillay, and I'm pleased to be your moderator again here at the India Global Forum 2024. So we're going to kick off with a discussion about what could be a looming clash between climate policies on the one hand and trade policies on the other. And in particular, we're going to look at CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which is being brought in by the European Union. It's a kind of import tax on all carbon-intensive goods coming into the EU. But some people say it could be protectionist. Is it? Let's find out more. I'm joined by some very cool guests now. Jagjeet Sareen is here with me in the studio, partner and global climate lead from Dalberg Advisors. Also Namita Vikas. Hi Namita, founder and managing director of the financial advisory group auctusESG. And joining us live from Delhi, there you are, Reena. We've been waiting for you. Lovely to see your face. Reena Suri, executive director of India Smart Grid Forum. So, Jagjeet, I'm going to start off with you. Are carbon tariffs, is the CBAM actually having an effect? Is it changing the equation?
Thanks, Nisha. First of all, for choosing this very, very important topic. So, to address CBAM, one has to look at the broader context of the economic growth of developing countries and the green transition. So what we see globally, there is a push to electrify all sectors of economy and green the electricity. That's one piece. The second piece is to green all the financial system. You know, if you want to issue a bond, it has to be green bond. You need to have a transition plan for your company. All those things are coming in. You have ESG. The third is the carbon pricing, domestic carbon pricing. There's a huge push to introduce carbon pricing across the value chain, including in hard-to-abate sectors. Fourth is the physical impacts of climate. And people have now started realizing how severe they're going to be on the supply chains. You put it all together and juxtapose it against the Inflation Reduction Act of the US, which pumped in $250 billion, the Green Deal of EU. Japanese have their own version of industrial policy, green industrial policy. You put it all together and stack developing countries' exports alongside this. And that's where CBAM becomes the sharp teeth, if you will. You know, they're putting all these import tariffs.
So the sharp teeth, you said.
Yes.
Are the teeth biting? Is it having
So it's going to get an effect
in
the coming year and more aggressive in the years to come, even going down to MSMEs. And estimates vary, but we are talking at least billions of dollars, if not more. And it's only going to get on an upward scale. And it's not just EU. US has just formed a commission to talk about trade and climate. We hear something similar coming up in the UK and then Australia, Canada. So it's going to be across the board. So what you're going to be seeing is green transition and trade are going to get head-on.
And countries need to prepare, right?
Yes.
So Namita Vikas, the financial institutions that you advise, that auctusESG advises, how are they responding to CBAM and the other carbon tariffs coming down the track? How are they preparing their borrowers?
Yeah. Thanks, Nisha, for that question. I think, you know, at one level, as regulated entities and with the rise of regulation all across borders, financial institutions are becoming very mindful of how their asset pricing will get impacted because of the taxations like CBAM, right? I think disclosure is the highest governance risk. And if you look at what ECB, the European Central Bank, has done, it's going to find 20 EU lenders for not reporting on their milestones as far as the climate risks are concerned. And when you look at climate risks, what they need to do, they need to assess the physical and the transition risk. And CBAM is a transition risk. And, you know, it's very important that these fines will come up for financial institutions, and that is on account of their borrowers. Also, at another level, it's important to understand that developing countries do not have the wherewithal, the capacities, the resources to decarbonize at the speed that they're required to. And therefore, that becomes a threat from a trade standpoint, right? So what financial institutions have started to do, one, they're decarbonizing. So they're putting out certain plans, the large ones that need to do. Two, they're also looking at newer sectors to invest in. And borrower is essentially at the core of all of this, right? So they are asking borrowers to come up with science-based transition plans, credible transition strategies, as well as looking at how comprehensive due diligence as far as they can do to not just look at the targets, but also look at what's actually happening at the borrower end. Data is the big elephant in the room, and there needs to be much done on
So
that.
data, transparency, making sure that you have a connected and credible story that you can tell the world. That's what I'm taking away. I just want to bring Reena Suri into the conversation now. You've worked in the energy sector for decades, Reena. What is your view on these carbon tariffs and taxes that are coming in and the effect on developing countries? Do you think it's protectionist?
Thank you, Nisha, and it's a pleasure to be here with this conversation. Yes, as Jagjeet also mentioned, that the carbon border adjustment mechanism, its potential impact on the millions employed in the MSME sector in India and other developing countries could be severe. And MSMEs may face challenges in accessing clean energy and obtaining transparent certification for the green energy they procure, a big challenge. So to support them, India Smart Grid Forum has been spearheading a peer-to-peer trading of green energy. And we have successfully executed 3 pilot projects of peer-to-peer trading of green energy on blockchain platform. First one was in a populous state of Uttar Pradesh, where we worked with the regulator and issued enabling regulations based on the results of these pilots. Already a large-scale rollout regulation is there, very first of its kind. And with this technology, MSMEs in UP will be able to contract green energy from consumers having rooftop solar, and will receive immutable certificates of origin with audit trail and generated on blockchain platform. And besides Uttar Pradesh, draft regulations are already there in Delhi, Karnataka, and are expected to be finalized soon. And many other states are working on similar regulations. And furthermore,
Reena, I'm just going to ask Jagjeet really what he sees the role of policymakers in all this to support small and medium enterprises. They can't do it alone.
Yeah, true. I think it goes to the heart of competitiveness of a country. And that's, if I have to leave your audience with 2 words, it's climate competitiveness. So policymakers have to think about how can they make the green energy cheaper and accessible to MSMEs, plus green credit, again, cheaper and accessible to MSMEs, and the technical assistance. The disclosure requirements going to be onerous. They barely manage their profitability in the small factories they have. Now you're going to impose all kind of conditions which have to be verified. So there has to be a lot of technical assistance coming. We need to understand, we are talking about tens or hundreds of millions of these small outfits. So it's a very retail at-scale operation, and the capacities need to be enhanced at that level. So again, just to summarize, green finance, which is cheap and accessible, green electricity, which is cheap and accessible, reliable, and a lot of technical assistance so that they can meet the regulatory requirement.
Great. Thank you for a snappy answer, Jagjeet. Our conversation's been a little negative, almost scary at times. Give us a positive example, Namita, of how governments and the private sector, think tanks, can work together to make a difference in this space.
So I'm going to pick up an example in sustainable finance, really. And I just want I'm going to take an India example because this is connected to India. Imagine 48,000 women are making salt in the arid region, western part of India in Kutch, and they are using diesel pumps to make salt. They are unbanked, and therefore they borrow from the local money lenders at anywhere upwards of 36 to 100% rate of interest, right? So they are stuck in this indebtedness cycle and in utter poverty. After 7 months of rigorous hard work, they earn $250. So that's the kind of money, that's the income. So what an example, and this is something that I have done. And despite government subsidies on solar pumps, the usage or the uptake is very poor. So solving for access to credit, availability of credit, and affordability of credit, what we did is we got together the government, we got together the local lenders, we got together NGO, and we provided a credit enhancement, we provided interest subvention, and we moved these women we took 6,000 women, a cohort of 6,000 women, and we moved them from diesel pumps to solar pumps. The whole idea was, how do you upscale the livelihood? How do you contribute to lower carbon emissions? And what we saw is, after this intervention that was made, their incomes went up to $872. They became credit worthy. There was 2,500
almost
tons of
3
CO2.
times higher, yeah.
Absolutely. And, emissions down per usage of the pump, and the direct bank transfers that happens through the government on the subsidies, that was done very speedily. So the fear of not wanting to access something like that. So that was a very impactful collaborative approach, where the government, the local lender, a credit provider, or credit enhancement provider, if I may say, a local NGO for doing the coordination on the ground. And that had not only an environmental impact, it had a social impact. And very important, when we are talking about transition, we have to talk about just transition.
Yeah, and so we have to do it together.
Yeah.
That's a very strong message coming from you there, Namita. Reena, I want to ask you to peer into your crystal ball and look down and give us a long-term sense of what's coming before us. If you don't mind, it's kind of a big question. What do you think is going to influence the intersection of these big things, energy, global trade, economic growth in the development sphere in the coming decade?
So the strategy being followed for energy transition is electrification globally, and the decarbonization of the electricity sector, which is going to be the game changer. And so far, the successful decarbonization of electric sector is through the renewable energy, such as solar and wind, playing a key role. The prices of the green energy is declining since the last decade to almost 90%. And while there are many manufacturers of wind turbines in geographies, solar cell production is confined to a few, and which is, could be a problem. But countries like India have taken clue from, this imbalance, and they have rectified their supply chain, and now offering cost of policy interventions, including production-linked incentives for the domestic manufacturing of solar cells, lithium-ion batteries, and other semiconductors. And MNCs from West also realize the risk of dependence on particular countries and regions. So I think the key essence and the growing trend is to have domestic manufacturing, and this trend is expected to grow in the coming decade, which will be beneficial for the whole world because of the diversification of the supply chain and chains and choices, which will promote the competition.
Reena, thank you so very much. Some massive changes coming down the track, really, in part sparked by these carbon border tariffs. Trade, climate, it's all one thing. Thank you so much for a great conversation, Reena, Suri in Delhi, Namita and Jagjeet here in the studio with us. It's been a pleasure having you with us at India Global Forum.
Thank you very much.